We are going to talk about a movie.
This is gonna be a disaster.
It was one of the best movies of the year.
It's gonna go so well. Probably one of the last movies I would ever want to see in a theater.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of 10 Years On. I'm your host, Jacob London, and as always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Taylor Robertson. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so great.
This has been a rough week.
Yep, it's been that. But happy episode 15?
Yes.
Is that what we're at? 15.
Jesus.
15 episodes. This is April 16th, 2010. But before we get into the movies, let me introduce my co-panelists. How are you guys today? Nick and Peter.
So good.
Very well.
It's been an interesting week.
I'm still the same person despite
Yes.
this.
What have you done with Peter?
Right? It'll be back in a week, so it doesn't take long.
Well, we are very glad that you are both here, despite the fact that the world is ending, apparently. So,
But Australia still hasn't enforced full quarantine. We're under social distancing rules, so this is less than 10 people. So we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
We're not breaking any laws by being in this room together.
And I've only coughed on everyone like twice.
Yeah.
So we're all right.
you know,
So
we're
we're
allowed to go have an election today, so I'm sure 4 people are allowed in a room. So, you know.
We could start a whole other show about stuff that's going on.
But let's start off instead with Kick-Ass. Dave Lewinsky is an unnoticed high school student and comic book fan who one day decides to become a superhero, even though he has no powers, training, or meaningful reason to do so. I mean, this is the poster.
I don't mind.
This is like the Blu-ray poster here.
Yeah. Was there any? I don't remember any. Oh, actually, sorry. The IMDb one.
That one's the main poster that I remember.
Yeah, so that was the US poster.
Yeah, so that's probably why I recognize that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Look, it's what you're in for. It's a guy dressed in a mediocre suit because he's a
I've
mediocre
actually
hero.
never seen this poster. I've only
Yeah,
ever seen
that's
that
our
one.
DVD.
That's
Blu-ray cover. Yeah.
So this is
Bit of
like
red.
that one to me is more interesting.
I would agree. That's a bit more comic booky.
Like this one's not bad, but
No.
the US release one is just one that makes me think more of like the comic book
Yeah.
kind of movie.
This looks a bit like, if I saw that, I'd be like, oh, straight to video?
yeah, a little bit.
And like Nicolas Cage, you're like, huh,
Probably
straight to
Definitely straight to video.
So let's talk about Kick-Ass, directed by Matthew Vaughn. In his career so far, he had done
Layer Cake.
Layer Cake and Stardust.
Oh.
So they were his 2
true.
films. This was his 3rd film. It's based on a comic book written by Mark Miller. He wrote it basically like we were saying a couple weeks ago with Last Song, kind of the same thing. He wrote it side by side on the intention of it being made into a film with Matthew Vaughn directing it. Look, 10 years ago, this was one of my favorite films. I loved this film so much. It was hilarious. 10 years ago, I went in having no idea what it was. We were there for a movie marathon and we were there to see other movies. And I just remember that opening scene so vividly.
Yeah.
Of him standing at the top of the building, jumping off and crashing in and going, "That's not me. That's just some
like
guy
mentally unstable.
That's just
dude.
some guy with a history of mental health problems." And losing it in the theater. I thought it was just one of the funniest, most original films I had ever seen. Revisiting it 10 years on, I can see a lot more of the flaws. And I can see that where Matthew Vaughn was able to take those flaws from this film, refine them, and give us the better version of Kick-Ass, which is Kingsman in 5 years.
That makes sense.
And that is now my relationship with Kick-Ass. Because I've got a better film in 5 years, I'm noticing a lot more of the flaws. I hated the voiceover. Like, really badly hated
the voiceover or his voice in the voiceover.
Let me tell you, the voice was a bit of a shock going into it because you just forget.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh my good
Little
lord.
pubescent Aaron
Wow.
Taylor Johnson squealing his way through the
he
movie.
glowed up.
Oh, hell yeah.
Massively.
Oh, hell
Big
yeah.
time.
Like,
He's adorable in this movie,
yeah.
but nowadays,
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
whew.
you could wreck me, Aaron Taylor Johnson. in this movie, you're like, all right, you're a cute little puppy dog, but now that's just me being thirsty for the episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow. Quarantine
Getting
has
right
changed
into
us
it.
so much.
But that is my thoughts on Kick-Ass, is that it's not aged well. I just don't think it's aged well at all.
I think there are parts of it that still hold really well. I think Nicolas Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz, their relationship in this movie is
So
still
good.
fantastic.
So
I think
good.
she kicks
She
a
is
lot of ass in
incredible.
this movie.
Oh,
She
yeah.
is so good. He's really great. The romance side story kind of kills it for me.
See, it's funny
a
you
little
say
bit.
that because when Jacob's talking about like the movie not holding up, that's one of the bits that definitely don't hold up for me. But it's also one of the most forgettable elements of the movie. I feel like you could remove so much of that, and Kick-Ass would still be good.
Yeah, because the girlfriend character adds nothing.
No.
Like she's
No.
never.
Like-
She's like she doesn't need to be saved.
No.
Like and then
And there's that whole side plot beforehand that she thinks he's gay, which I was like, didn't add anything. And I again don't remember that from the previous
And I
times
get
watching
maybe
it.
the idea of trying to put it in for like a comedic effect at that point in time of being like, oh, there's a misunderstanding here. I get it, but it didn't even really have that effect. Like it wasn't.
because then when he's like, I'm not gay, there's no conflict. It's just
No.
like, all right, you can fuck me now. Like there's like,
Yeah, they never resolve anything.
Hey, creeping into my room when you're gay, that's okay. Creeping into my room when you're straight, you're a disgusting human. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really
It's really
make it.
But even
yeah.
so, like they don't give anything to each other character wise.
No.
Like
No.
they don't.
He gets to go from a loser nerd to having sex. 'cause
Yeah,
he's a
basically.
superhero.
because it
That's
doesn't
literally
like
it.
because it's weird because in like any other high school movie, the rumor that he's gay would probably
have
more of an
bigger
effect, and it doesn't.
No.
And then him getting her, it doesn't turn him into like a stud.
No,
Like like it just.
it has no
It has
outcome
there's
on
nothing.
the.
It doesn't change his character in any way.
Well-
like he's got a better relationship with Chloe Grace Moretz.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then at the end, when we're supposed to believe she's sobbing her eyes out and her heart's broken because she thinks they're all dead,
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
just kind of go, okay. Like they've been dating
Like-
for like what, a week, and she thought he was gay for like 4 months. So I don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Like,
What's interesting about that, and this is, I think, also an adaptation problem in the comic. They're not in a relationship at all. Once she finds out he's not gay, she
Leaves him.
leaves him, sends him and actually sends him a photo of her giving her new boyfriend
That's
head.
right. Yeah.
Like like
Mark
that's-
Miller, you dirty dog.
You'd almost like that.
but
Feels
that's
like
a
that
high
would-
school thing.
But
Yeah.
I feel like that would have fit with the
What they're
mentality of
going-
this film being
Yeah.
so like we're like not the action movie you think we're gonna be. So yeah, him saying I'm not gay and her being like fuck you and then sending a photo doing that, you'd be like that actually
That
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
You know.
And then I just remembered it kind of makes sense their friendship, for at least for the first time that he's in a massive altercation when he goes to visit that drug guy. And that's when we first see like arguably one of the best hit girl scenes in the movie. So it makes sense for like the first part that we need it to be. And then, yeah, for the rest of it, it's a bit redundant.
Yeah, it's. I think you could have found a way around that without them having to be a couple or
Yeah.
even just do the whole. Because I think the whole gay best friend side is it comes across as hurtful now, like or not hurt. Like it
No,
doesn't
well,
come across
yeah.
as a joke.
Like the
anymore.
fact
Yeah.
that she's like, oh, I don't think you're all the same. Like
Yeah.
little lines like that. You're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's because it's like it's not. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
But that's what I mean. Like the situation itself isn't bad because
No.
you could have a misunderstanding
Yeah.
like that. But
Yes.
just the way they
The way
handle
that's
it is
yeah.
like,
Very
Like it would have been,
2010.
it would have been great if his character was gay because he doesn't have any, like,
real romantic.
you never see him with any
prospects.
romantic
No.
things because it's all about him wanting to be a superhero. So what, if he was gay, who cares?
Yeah, it could have been interesting. It could have actually made like an extra dynamic to.
Yeah.
And then her sobbing over him, if she was like genuinely his friend, you would cry
Yeah.
over your friend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but
Yes. Yeah.
and there's other things that MySpace in 2010, like
Oh,
it's just
it's so
hilarious.
great
It's
watching
like-
it being like,
love
I
that, yeah.
literally was
That was
watching
great.
it with Wing and when MySpace, I was like, ha, fucking MySpace. Look at that.
Look how far we've come.
Which is
in
funny
10
because
years.
later in this year we get the Facebook movie, which
Yeah.
is still relevant today.
You know what?
Like, it's-
I wish we had a MySpace Tom movie. Remember when you joined up and Tom was your friend? You're like, I didn't
yes.
even know this guy. And he's
The
my
sexual predator Tom, who was, my mum was like, get him off your MySpace. I remember that.
friend. What accent was that?
I don't know. It was my mum, actually.
I was off my bath then.
No one else's mum's talking like that. What are you doing on the computer?
But there were a lot of good things about this
Yes.
movie that I did still have fun with. I did still enjoy this movie. I just
Yeah.
don't think that it packs as much of a punch as you probably remember it
Yeah.
having when you first saw it.
Yeah, so what's funny is I saw this in a marathon with this, Green Zone, and The Wolfman. At the time, I hated the other two films, and I loved this movie.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's now flipped. Like it's that weird thing of
Hindsight.
like
I love it.
like Wolfman I think is still probably the worst of the three, but that's more fun for me to maybe watch than this now.
Right.
Like it's just Green Zone is now the best of the three, I think. But yeah, it's just interesting for me just how Kick-Ass is just. It's hilarious. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of incredibly funny moments, and I think that a lot of the moments with Nicolas Cage, who I remember not liking when I first saw it,
no.
now he is the best part
buddy.
of this movie. He is
Nicolas
the
Cage.
absolute best part.
Yeah, like we should just say that
Fucking
because
love
like
him.
Nick,
I have an affinity for
right?
Well, I don't know if I've said this on the show before. We share the same birthday. We are both born January 7th. So there is just a spiritual connection that I have with. the
I mean,
old
you guys
Cage
share a
Master.
name too, so imagine that.
Holy shit. No, I didn't know that.
He's like, I never thought about
Like, and also like Nick La, like it's all right there.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh,
wow.
I love him in this movie so much because he's allowed to be his quirky self. And it fits the tone of the movie so much.
There's moments that he elevates to just be that much funnier. That you
Yes.
just go, okay, no, this is actually hilarious.
And
yeah.
I might be the only person who thinks this, but he elevates funny scenes. But the scene where we're getting the live broadcast of the torture and he is just being so over the top eccentric, yelling out all the cues to hit girl. That scene gets me like every time. I don't know why. I started feeling a little emotional during this.
Because I remember hating the way he delivered those lines when I first saw
Same.
it. Like
And
I
that
was
was
kind of
me,
like,
yeah.
And then watching it now,
I
I was kind of
love
like,
it.
no, I get it, and it fits his dynamic as a
Yeah.
character because he is so. Like
Eccentric.
he's just pushed that little bit past being a normal person.
Well, especially when he has the mask on.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
takes it up to a whole nother level.
and I love that you see like because
Him putting it on,
Yeah,
yeah.
because in Batman movies where it's like his under the eyes are always dark, and in this movie you see him like putting on eyeliner. And I'm
scene's
like,
just
that's
so
what
cool.
they would do.
It's just so cool.
And like adding the beard because when he adding the mustache, Great.
yeah,
There
the
you go.
moustache, yeah.
Because when he's in that suit, I was like, that doesn't look like Nicolas Cage.
No.
You know, but which I think is funny because when you
chameleon.
see Christopher Mintz-Plasse like, in his red mist, you're like,
As
there's
red.
no way.
There's no difference.
There's no way
There's
that's
no
gonna
difference.
be him.
I
You know?
love it because it's 100. And that's what the character is. It's just rich boy wanting to play
Yeah.
superhero.
and he doesn't disguise his voice at
No.
all. And if
No.
you're Christopher Mintz-Plasse,
I was like,
you cannot get away.
Like you're like the way that you look. I was like, there's no way we're gonna forget how you look. Like you're
he-
just like, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, you wouldn't think that
No.
that's
No.
Dave because
it doesn't.
everything's covered up. Yeah.
But there's those moments that work incredibly. Like
Yeah.
I also think Mark Strong is really good in this. Like
I love the
underrated
father-son
how good he
relationship
is.
in
Yes.
this movie is
Yeah.
so good.
When they're in the
Yeah.
limo and they're going to the cinema, and he's like saying like all the they're dynamic, but Mark Strong is the
oh,
best
Oh.
villain for this movie.
But that's
So
my
good.
thing. Like I really like right at that point we were going through the Mark Strong is the villain of everything, and
Yeah.
it was getting tired. Like it was
It was like
Sherlock.
it was like Sean Bean dies, Mark Strong's a villain.
yeah, like
pretty
that.
much,
It was,
yeah.
And John Bernthald's going to be in your movie for 5 minutes.
but that was 2010, and
Now.
here we got, and you know, it was getting to a point where it was cliched, and he wasn't adding anything extra. Here, he actually does add something extra. Like he
so
is able
funny.
to go, no, okay. He makes this character unique and his own, and that's what I love. That scene in the cinema, like in the
The
back of
car.
the car going to the cinema, is perfect.
So
for that.
good.
The the whole
I
scene.
love that.
So the
scene.
microwave scene is
And
just hilarious.
In the wood lumber microwave is so fucking funny.
And yeah, there are moments that are just genuinely hilarious, and that you just sit there and just absolutely piss yourself laughing.
I mean, when Hit Girl gets shot by Nicolas Cage, like at the beginning, that introduction's great. But Hit Girl's introduction when she's fighting for the first time, and she walks in, she drops the C-bomb, so funny, and then she kicks everyone's ass, is one of the highlights of the movie.
But I think it's great to rewatch that now, because obviously when that came out, everyone had an issue, more so with the fact that she said the C word, and everyone was like, you don't care that she's murdered everybody?
Yeah,
like that seemed to be very much pushed
that.
aside. Rewatching it now, I was like, I can see why this movie upset people.
It's problematic for
But
someone.
also like,
yeah.
and it's like, it really is incredibly violent, like what she's doing.
Oh, shit,
and then I
yeah.
read up on it, and Chloe Grace Moretz was like, whenever she would talk about it, she said her household, she was like, I never said language. So you almost think how traumatic or it would have been for her. And she said, I never even said like ass. She was like, I
she
either
called it as kick butt. Yeah.
kick butt, or she's like, I refer to it as that movie.
Yeah.
So you just sort of think like,
Bless
and then
her.
when she says it, you're like, it sounds quite organic.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like she's.
And like when she's
Yeah.
doing the stuff with the knife, I was like, that is
Oh,
like
the
you are
butterfly knife?
committed.
It's
I was
so
like,
good. Because it caught, like, my partner hasn't seen the movie, and she was in the bedroom while I was watching it. And then she, like, turned for that one scene. She's like, did she just say the C word? Oh, my God. And I was like...
but like
mean,
I
it
remember
fits the
seeing
movie.
that for
It
the
makes
first
sense.
time, and her saying that line, and everyone in the cinema is like this, like, ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, and because she says it, hard C, hard T.
Yeah, it's
like,
not.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like I
well,
am,
because she
like,
has a very American accent, so it's
Oh,
you
yeah.
pronounce the shit
Yeah.
out of every syllable. Like it's not.
such a baby in this.
Oh
movie.
God, I know.
Like how
When
we saw
she-
Diary of a Wimpy Kid, where she looked like she was sort of starting to
Yeah.
progress. This one, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, you're a little tiny flower. Like, oh my God.
And now, since we're on this topic, I want to talk about actually something you brought up: how there were all the other studios essentially weren't going to make this
that's
movie
right, yeah.
unless.
So other studios were, when they were shopping them around, said either make it PG-13 or make Hit Girl 19. It was one or the other.
Right.
So they went, we're fine with the violence, we're fine with the swearing, but it can't be an 11-year-old. It has to be a 19-year-old.
And can you imagine how shittier of a movie it would have been
Yeah,
if they
it-
did that?
The
Yeah.
impact's just not there.
No,
Like,
yeah.
No.
But I also read that another review, which watching this, I was like, I don't know what movie he saw, because he said he found it really problematic how sexualized they made Hit Girl. And watching
Where?
it back, I was like, there is never a
Okay,
moment.
there's one moment. I will say there's one moment, and if you find this sexual, that's on you. But the moment when she shows up in the little skirt and
Oh,
the
right.
little
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
maybe.
Maybe.
But she's still 11 and
yeah.
fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
But like and like pretty much he was the only one who thought that. Like everyone was just like,
What
no,
are
she's
you
not
on
at
about?
all sexualized. Like her outfit
she's in big
is-
fluffy coats and she's fully
and her-
covered
like, her
and she's
outfit
like
is- yeah, like so. I'm very thankful as well that they didn't go
Yeah.
that route, because if they chose a 19-year-old,
Of course it would
absolutely
be.
have been,
Absolutely would have been.
Would have been like
Easy.
tight
Yeah.
purple leather or something. Yeah.
But I just think it's so interesting to think about how studios couldn't see it for what it was and go,
Yeah.
no, there's a reason we made her 11. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason why she has to be a little girl in this
Yeah.
movie. Otherwise, if you make her 19, what is that relationship with her father?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
gets a
It's-
little...
Well, you've got to you either age him up or
Well,
like it's,
the whole point is that
It would change.
It would
like,
change the whole
entire
story.
dynamic
Well,
of
there's
the
a
movie.
whole
the
moral
whole
dilemma of-
purpose of why he's going after Mark Strong in the first place completely changes.
Well, that's
Yeah.
it, because the whole moral dilemma of what Big Daddy is doing is indoctrinating her. Is he brainwashing her to be like, we need to kill these people because they killed... In fairness, like, he's on his right trajectory, but like, she's also 8 or 9 years old, and you're like being like, we need to massacre some people. So that's the whole moral dilemma of the movie, which is interesting.
it is. But
Great
that's Kick-Ass.
soundtrack, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
And that
Great
was the other
fucking
thing.
soundtrack.
The score is incredible. Like I just
So
I
much.
really do love that superhero score that they actually
Yeah.
give it. Like they give it a superhero score that is good and original and feels like a superhero score.
And then
So
they crank
much
out
Prodigy.
Bad Education behind
Bad
it.
Education is
So
great. They have the theme from Sunshine in there at one point, and
Yeah.
then so much Prodigy. So much Prodigy. I love it.
But that's Kick-Ass. I think
Oh God, I'm not ready.
it's a recommendation from all of us.
Yes.
Like it's
It's good.
I'd
It's
go
pretty good.
see it, even if like look.
Don't watch the sequel.
What? I didn't. There's no sequel. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's a really good.
I don't know what I was talking
Yeah.
about.
I think you just had a
Peter
moment
with,
of.
Peter with a weird face doesn't know what he's talking about. Peter with a beard
this-
will know what's up.
This is just a really good standalone film that has never a sequel. All right, let's move on to the other film of the week. We are, of course, talking about the 2010 remake of Death at a Funeral. A funeral ceremony turns into a debacle of exposed family secrets and misplaced bodies.
Okay, I want to just appreciate the most important thing about this poster right now,
Yeah.
which is that
The old Mars boy.
everything else
Good
is a
old
bit.
Marsden.
I mean, it's not the thing is it's not a
poster's
bad
fine.
poster,
It's
but it's not a good like. There's not really too much I can.
I like the mystery of it's. This is going to be the hardest thing to talk about without comparing it to the UK version. I like the UK version poster better because it's a little bit more. You don't know what's going on. There's a bit more nudity on the UK poster, so you kind of are a bit more curious as to what that side story is about. But yeah, this is a poster. Like it's exactly what would pop up on
Yeah.
Netflix. You'd be like, this just looks like,
Like this,
a
if you
debaucherous
spent
comedy.
about 2 minutes thinking, what could I make this poster? This is what
That's-
you'd
yeah.
come up with, and they'd be like, great idea, sounds great.
And there's no
Here's
like
$1 million.
It's,
Like,
not, it's
basically.
not like Why Did I Get Married, where the Photoshop is just terrible. Like the
No,
Photoshop's
Photoshop's
not bad.
fine,
Like it looks fine.
Yeah.
It's it's.
Yeah.
I love how everyone's like miserable essentially, except for like the three on this end
Yeah.
of the poster. They're having a great time. Everyone else, not so much.
Peter Dinklage from this far away looks like Johnny Galecki.
Yeah, a little bit.
I need glasses.
All
They're
I-
blurry
all
for me.
I
I'm
can
not going to
add.
lie.
All I can add.
I've lied my way through every poster talk. I can't see that far.
All right, let's move on.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, Death at
Well-
a Funeral. Okay.
I just want to say you got to be prepared for how homophobic this movie is going into it.
Oh, yeah.
You just got to prepare yourself for that because it's not great.
Great week for the gays.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
It's not funny. It's not tastefully handled when they refer to
No.
anything having to do with any of that.
And this is what we were talking about in the group chat, is that the UK version has the exact same storyline. Everyone is shocked when it's revealed that the dad is gay. But you said it made a good point where it was like, it kind of makes a bit more sense in the UK film because it's a bit more prim and proper and it's sort
They
of in
have
this
like
old
that
style of
reputation to
yeah,
uphold.
yeah,
and-
exactly.
yeah.
Whereas in this film, the only difference is that everyone, well, most people in this film are African American, and it's just a outwardly, I don't know how word to explain it. I was going to say flamboyant, but that seems like what I would
It's
say if
just,
it was a gay
it's
person
more
reacting
like
to it, I
they're
guess.
just,
I don't know.
they don't really have a reputation to
Strike three me.
they
I
don't
was
really,
going for it.
they don't really have a reputation to uphold because they're all just obnoxious as it is.
Yeah,
Like they don't
obnoxious,
have
yeah,
like
that's a
they
good word.
don't have this prim and proper kind of thing that they're trying to uphold. It's more just it very much contradicts what they have in their head as this is their father.
Yes.
Like it's more of just like
It's more of a like, why did he have to be gay?
Yeah,
It could have been
yeah,
anything else. And it's
basically.
like, well, then change the screenplay then to make
But
it
it's-
something else.
it's
like,
just it's
And
not great.
that's where it comes down to my biggest problem with this film. It is a terrible adaptation. They, it's not funny, but that's because it's not a good adaptation to adapt. They've just gone, okay, we've taken scenarios that are hilarious for a British white family and gone, we're just going to take those exact same scenarios and put them into an African American family and it will be funny.
They didn't
It's
do
like,
anything
no,
to
it's-
culturally adjust the script because affluent English families and American families are not usually very translatable in terms of a lot of cultural things.
Well,
so
no,
that
yeah,
just
it's
wouldn't, it
just-
just doesn't work.
The UK film is so dry and sarcastic, and that's UK humor through and through, and that's why I think it did well here. It was like I thoroughly enjoyed the UK version, and there was elements of this one I enjoyed, but I start to think more so I was entertained by the stars, like the stars of the movie, and sort of some of the chemistry they had. I know you'll talk about our boy Marsden later.
I will, you bet I will.
But I mean, like, this movie just feels bigger, not better. And that's its biggest problem.
It has a lot of cast in it. It has a lot of names.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really do much to reconcile any of the problems.
And everyone just feels like they're playing themselves. Like, I like Chris Rock as a comedian and as a person, and I just felt like I was watching Chris Rock. And then when he's having a bit of banter with Martin Lawrence, I was like, I like you guys together, but you're not. Like, I don't feel like I'm watching you in this movie. Martin Lawrence has issues with his character, don't get me wrong. But, like, when they're together, like, bickering and arguing, I'm like, this is entertaining, but it's also only 5% of the movie.
I also don't believe for a second that any of these people like Luke Wilson. Like, he's supposed to be the favorite over James Marsden, and I do not believe for a second that any of them actually like him. Like, it's just... like... No, none of the chemistry is good, really, between most of them. Like,
no.
it's just not.
It's, yeah.
I don't. It just feels like it's not. It's just not. Like,
No,
it's
yeah,
just.
there's just the comedy just doesn't land.
The only comedy that lands for me is James Marsden in this movie. Like,
That's fair.
because he goes 100% in on this role. Like, and he has to be completely ridiculous. Like, he has to do some very absurd things in this movie, and he's just thrown himself completely into it. I think Zoe Saldana is good in the movie with what she has to work with, but I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, there is.
It's a great
There is
cast.
one payoff to
It's
me in
just-
this whole movie, and you missed it because you went to pick up pizza for me.
I need to actually watch the ending.
The
of this
one
movie.
payoff in the whole movie is when Peter Dinklage's character is in the coffin
Oh,
with him,
yeah.
and the coffin starts moving, and James Marsden goes, "I told you it was moving!
Yeah.
I knew it!"
That's-
And then the chaos, that is the only payoff in the whole movie for me, because it goes full circle on when he
A
was
joke from the beginning.
insisting,
Yeah.
like, just beyond any reason at all, that it was happening.
I think that's the toughest part about watching this movie, is that I do love the UK version so dearly, and it's just the exact same movie. And that's the hardest part, is that you just know all those bits are coming. Like, that's like, the payoff is fantastic, but it just doesn't work. It might work if I watched the UK one. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's funny when they did it. And then as soon as it's become a complete rip-off of that, it's the only benefit this movie had is not being, because it's rated M here, which there's actually a broad variety of movies at M, but I feel like it benefits from not being PG-13 in America, because it's allowed to be a bit more free with its humor and drop a few more F-bombs. And the one scene that no one else seemed to like, where I pissed myself laughing, is the shit on the hand. I mean, I get it. I'm juvenile. I'm not going to defend myself on how dumb and ridiculous that is, but it is one of the bits that still make me laugh, because it is just so... And because it happens to... Does it happen to Kevin Hart or Tracy Morgan?
I think it's Tracy Morgan.
Yeah. So
Kevin Hart's in the opening, and
that's right. He's the funeral director. Yeah. It happens to either one of those two. You just know they're going to have the reaction that you want to see from that, and that's okay.
The only other part that kind of got me somewhat interested in the movie is when they're all, it initially comes to the point where they have Peter Dinklage tied up and they're all in the bathroom and they're like, is he going to die? And he's just like, he can still hear what they're talking about. And it's just...
How weird is also getting Peter Dinklage to play this exact same
And
character
that's
in both
another
movies?
that's
so weird.
And that's a
They
whole
should've
other
made-
that's a whole other cultural thing that they bring into
should've
it.
made Peter Dinklage
Where-
British. Like,
Yeah,
give him
that
that would have been funny.
Yeah.
But they
Just for me.
but
Just
the,
look at you're so disappointed in me right now.
Peter hasn't said a word all review. So, Peter, the
Please
floor
take it
is
away.
yours.
Like, it's... everything has been said.
Oh, that's a cop-out. Come on.
No,
Dr.
I-
Cop Out.
Tell us what you really
Like,
feel.
I agree. Like, James Marsden is... And Zoe Saldana. I remember watching... I love the British movie, but I do try and watch... I don't like to compare. I just want to watch this as its own thing. And it's impossible not to compare it, because it's literally the same movie.
movie.
So it's really hard to sit there and go, oh, it's not the same. It's not the same, but it is the same because all the jokes are happening. I was like, I know where this is going to go. I know where this is going to go. But even as its own thing, I just found it like really unfunny. As we said, like homophobic, just like mean. Like they just none of
Dude,
these
Luke,
characters
Luke
were
Wilson
nice.
is such a dick.
Like
He's like not even charming. He's just a
He's
and
a
like in the
dick.
British version, the guy that's his character, because he's like, he's not the most attractive character,
No.
and he tries to play it like he is, and no one really likes him that
No.
much. So them having Luke Wilson, who you sort of think, okay, Luke Wilson's
He's like
he's
charming.
but I think they're meant to
charismatic,
be
yeah.
like, oh, he's attractive enough
to be
that's
an
why-
asshole.
Yeah, that's why we all like him. But you go, no, you're just an asshole, and
And I mean,
It's-
essentially, he's also like, yeah, sexual assault.
right, like it's like this movie's it's very problem. Like I remember the stuff that was in the British one that you watch back now and going, it's a little bit problematic. It still kind of gets away with it because.
It at least admits those things are problematic.
And
like that.
I think because the family is so
yeah.
hush hush,
Yeah.
it makes more sense when
That
like
makes
the dad
more, yeah.
is revealed to be gay and Peter Dinklage
They're
so
like-
like a British patriarch who was having like an affair with an American midget,
Yeah.
gold. But in this one,
It's true,
it's
it's
kind of like, I mean, as much as they would be surprised that a hulking black man is having an affair with a little midget, I think by that point you're just like, well, of course he is, because your family is just like batshit crazy. It really hurt to watch this because I like the original
So
and then,
much, yeah.
and because there's so much talent in this
Yeah,
cast.
I know.
And like watching it, I was like, Zoe Saldana and James Marsden, you can have your own movie.
I love
'cause
how
you're
they're the
only
two sane people in
Right.
the movie too.
Yeah.
Like they're a lot of fun, but
And,
they're
like-
also not just assholes
also,
to
like,
everybody.
It's quite amusing to be like, Kevin Hart came out of this movie looking fine. Because he's not in it enough to annoy you.
No.
Yeah, like he
You know?
has.
This was
a-
like pre Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart.
but he has a somewhat funny moment.
Yeah.
Of,
Yeah.
Oh, you brought the wrong body.
And he's like, "Are you
it-
sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure this isn't your
That's the
dad?"
funniest part, yeah.
Like that's
Doesn't
funny.
it reveal
And, like,
then to be
that
a
happened-
Chinese
yeah.
guy?
Yeah.
So it's all
And like
okay,
that
that's-
happening at the beginning sort of made me go,
Maybe.
Maybe.
nah.
Yeah,
Nah.
and the other thing that I took out of this movie is, in the end, you kind of go, no, I get where Peter Dinklage is coming from. Like he's
Yeah.
the one where you go, you're the only one here who's not an arsehole. Like a genuine bona fide. Like I get where he's coming from. He's like, I just lost my lover and I get nothing.
Right.
Like, yeah, I get it. Like,
And he had suffered through enough just being at this damn funeral to be owed whatever he wants.
yeah. So, and the whole thing, the other thing. Going, oh, they're both authors and taking that, which is directly from the British
Yeah,
one. And
like,
it's like,
you think maybe change it up to be, I don't know, both actors or
Yeah,
both
like-
Be
like
comedians
comedians,
or
yeah.
sports commentator.
sports,
Yeah.
Whoever
you know,
wrote
but like
this
having them both be
screenplay
writers, you just be
earned
like,
the easiest paycheck of their life doing this movie.
yeah.
but that's the thing, like authors in America, like it's just not, the cultural is just not the same. Like you can't just take the same.
It wouldn't
script.
be like, oh, this big famous author, really. It would be more like, oh, it's cute that you write books for a living. Like you
Yeah.
stay home and write books, and do you have a job? Like it would be more
Yeah.
like,
Whereas in the British one, it's kind of just like, when's your next book coming? Because your last one like made us rich, you
yeah.
know, like it makes
which
sense.
they didn't even use. Like they kind of used that angle, but not
Not enough,
really.
yeah.
So there wasn't even really a point of. Like it
Yeah.
just the author thing didn't really
Yeah.
tie in other
Like-
than the fact that they're like, oh, I can't believe we have to listen to this asshole give a speech instead of you. Like,
Yeah.
and you're just
But
like,
and like that would make sense as well if they were like comedians or actors, because
Yeah.
they'd be like, he's the funny comedian.
he's
You're
the
not
one
as
that
good.
makes money and goes on tour
Yeah.
and like
It's like literally they just went, oh, this part of the script, fuck it, we'll just keep this. Like,
Yeah. And that's my biggest frustration with this movie, is that just watching it.
it
going,
didn't even take a swing
No.
to like
No.
do anything,
yeah, like,
which is
you can you can remake a movie and use like the basic premise, but you can also
which is the death at the funeral.
Yeah, but like this has like massive potential to extend to other characters and not have them be carbon
Yeah.
copies of the original.
The premise of this movie could have just been hijinks at a funeral.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, we're going to call.
And Americans
call it.
love a good hijink.
But that's what I mean. Like it's stuff happens at a funeral. write it from there, but make it for make it for an African American audience, make it for a white American audience, make it for
Make it for an American audience.
Yeah,
National Lampoon's Funeral
Yeah,
Vacation.
exactly.
But that's
exactly.
the thing,
But you know, like Clark Griswold at a
someone
funeral,
fucking dies at
sign me up.
someone dies at the funeral, and they Weekend at Bernie's just sunglasses him
Right.
and walk him around just do something.
Just a basically what feels like a shot-for-shot remake of a film that was only 3 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for me.
I would not recommend this.
Watch
Watch
the
the
British
original. Watch the original.
It's so good.
Yes, definitely.
Gosh.
Just watch the British one. All right,
We've got a special movie coming up here that most of our viewers are gonna have no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
So, we are going to now move on to our last film, which opened in Australia in this day. It's an Australian film.
Screen Australia.
Is this like
We
our
get
second
movies
Aussie
here
film?
too, you guys.
Is this like our second
Yeah.
Aussie film
Yeah.
we've
Brand
done?
new day.
Yeah, this is
So,
brand new day.
Wow.
The only way's up.
Peak cinema.
Let's talk about Beneath Hill 60.
Let's.
In 1916, the first Australian tunneling company is tunneling beneath German fortifications and bunkers to detonate massive explosive charges.
I hate
Mic
myself.
drop.
Why can I not say a simple word?
Say
okay.
it. Fortifications.
Fortifications.
There
There we go. I can say it. Well done.
To be fair,
not
I
a
mean,
complete idiot.
he was calling Edge of Darkness Edge of Tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's fair.
We are close up to Brendan
Dude,
Cowell's
what did they
face
do
in
to
this
his
movie.
face?
Fisheye lensed his face.
And it's
And of course, Guyton Grantley is in this movie.
Yes.
For
He
those
was
of you who
our-
don't know,
yeah.
he's in every fucking.
He
Australian
was in everything.
He's like our most Australian star for
which
the
one is that one?
on the right
On
at
the
the
right.
top.
Oh,
He's
is
in-
that our
Ron
that's our
Weasley.
dude? He played Ron Weasley when we saw
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter
Yeah.
Okay,
in
cool.
Melbourne.
Oh right.
Yeah.
That's the only way
That's
I can.
what he's
He
up
was
to.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
I've
He was
never
really
seen
good though.
Yeah.
He was like,
Oh, we like him.
We like him.
This is
He's
not a dig
just
against
in
Guyton Grantley.
everything.
Like
So-
he pops up all the time.
For American audiences, his most famous role before any of this was he played Carl Williams
Carl Williams.
in Underbelly. Now,
he also had a great casino advert as well.
Oh, I don't remember that.
fair enough.
Sorry.
Continue.
Yeah, so and Underbelly was like one of our biggest shows.
It was like our
Arguably
Sopranos.
our best show ever. Yeah.
and it's a huge show in Australia, and he was basically the main character,
Yeah.
and that's his big thing.
Actually, he was so well known for the role. I don't know if you guys know this. Tropfest, the film
Dr.
festival.
Cop-Out.
Dr. Cop-Out fact.
I do know
You know
the
this?
story. I do know the
That
story.
a Tropfest short film was made called Being Carl Williams, in which two actual Melbourne underground gangsters kidnap Guyton Grantley, thinking he's Carl Williams, and try and kill him, make him dig his own grave.
That's
It's
I
one of the
want that
funny.
movie.
It is so funny.
Can we do a drunk commentary on that movie?
Yeah, it's like
It'd be-
15 minutes long.
They're
It's,
like 3 minutes.
oh no, Tropfest can go longer. Like if you're in the main competition.
Oh, okay,
you
fair
can.
enough.
It is so funny because he's just the whole movie. He's like digging his own grave. He's like, I just fucking played him on a show. Like I'm not Carl Williams. So, but we love Guyton Grant.
Yeah.
Oh,
and we
that's
hope
funny.
you listen to the show.
So that's the poster. That's the poster for Beneath Hill 60.
listen, this poster has horrible lighting all around.
Oh yeah.
Like,
So again, they look dead
yeah,
off the top,
yeah. It looks like they're like in heaven. They've ascended.
overlooking like a lost soccer team.
No one's looking at the same thing.
No.
yeah.
So
Well, that is the sports scene in the movie, actually.
Yeah.
So.
the,
Oh yeah, it is.
oh my god. The first thing that I want to say about this, and I group messaged everyone as soon as these things started happening, because I was very distressed, and I've posted this everywhere because everybody needs to know. The chemistry in this movie when there are conversation scenes is the most static thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, it does not sound like they're actually speaking to each other.
Nope.
But somehow, through these very static conversations, this lovely 16-year-old girl that we've seen on this poster, in front of her parents, flirts with, what's his face? Big head guy?
Brendan Cowell.
Wow.
Him.
Oliver Woodward.
They just very awkwardly flirt with each other in front of her parents.
And he doesn't necessarily reciprocate at
But-
first. He's a little bit, and then he's like, oh, she is flirting
But
with
it's so
me.
awkward because
So
you don't
awkward.
actually know if it is.
That's Bella
And then-
Heathcote, right?
Yeah.
She's, yeah.
And then it's just all kind of happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't even know how to put into words. There's a
She's
scene
16 and he's 26.
in the movie. He's 26.
In real life,
He's fucking 40 years old.
I looked it up. In real life, he was 30 when this was all going
Yeah,
down
like-
the start of
Okay,
the war.
I looked at it and I went, he's got to be at least 30.
So-
and then there was a point in the movie where he's like, I'm 10 years your senior. And I was like, bull-loney.
Yeah.
Bull-loney. Is that what that
like,
is?
So I got the group message of like the talking about it, and I was like, all right. So I'd finished watching a movie that we will discuss
Later.
next week, 2 weeks time.
Oh, yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah,
2 weeks time.
at
Yes.
some point.
Oof. Fucking gold. But so I started watching this, and Bella Heathcote came on screen, and I hadn't seen this movie
I thought she
prior,
was
so I knew her from Dark Shadows,
Yeah.
which I thought she was quite good in, and then she did like Neon Demon,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I remember.
and she was in the 50 Shades sequel, where she was
the
demented.
the submissive one, yeah.
Anyway, so
I
she
don't
came
know,
on
I
screen, and
know
I
that.
was like, Bella Heathcote. And then when I realized that she was sitting at the table with Brendan Cowell, I was like, wait, is this the romance that
That Taylor's been yelling about.
And I went, oh. And as you said, it's so, it's like aggressively uncomfortable.
It is.
Because how she's like flirting with him, and as you said, he's not really reciprocating initially.
No. I
But
think he
because
didn't
the
even know.
because the acting in that whole scene is quite terrible.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't actually tell.
You couldn't
if she-
tell, but that's
if
what I'm
You
saying.
couldn't tell if she was flirting or she's just delivering terribly. Because Jacqueline McKenzie, I think she's fucking terrible in this movie.
Oh, well,
Like I don't
that
think
was the mum?
the mother.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how and when Brendan Cowell comes to ask if he can
Write her
her.
letters.
and then the parents go for a walk, and Bella Heathcote's just like, she's like, my parents haven't taken walks in forever.
She's like, my dad has never invited her on a walk.
And I'm like, it's just like little
Oh, look,
lines
it's-
like that just,
It's 1915. What are you going to do?
it's just like, but none of
But
the
then,
lines,
but then,
none of
but
the
then he
lines
goes
have,
full background and is like, when I come back, I'll take you on walks every day.
yeah. Oh, I heard that line and I was like, ugh.
So,
Okay, hold on. I need to tell you what had me literally throwing up, though, because there was a point where I was like, I can't believe with my own eyes I've had to see this. When they like walk outside and this romantic like swelling music starts to happen and they're just like looking at each other and I'm like, no, no. And then they kiss each other and I can't believe with my own eyes. I've had to watch this clearly 16-year-old kiss this clearly not 26-year-old. And I can't. Like, I know it was a different time.
Like, I
I know
feel like
it's not in
he's
the
been-
middle of the cities in Australia,
Like
but
he's
like,
been aged down and she's
like-
been aged up because
oh, yeah.
it was real bad, let
Yeah.
me tell you. And it's hard to
Let's-
reconcile with because it's also a time when clearly they were sending 16-year-olds into the
the
war.
war,
Like
yeah.
there were boys who were her age
Who are
getting
in there
sent
with him.
in.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, well, all of this is just fucked because if you're going to tell the 16-year-old boys they can go fight and die, how can you tell your 16-year-old girls that they can't be adults as
Yeah,
well?
and
Like,
get
you,
married.
like how
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you can't do that then? And so I'm just like, well, all this sucks.
Now, let's not forget the best part
Oh,
of all of
God.
this is that all of the romance is flashbacks, every single one of them.
None of it is present tense except for the very end.
Oh my
I
God.
kept like forgetting that. Like every time, like he'd be like, I was like, no, I know that you're in a bunker.
Yeah.
And then when it goes to him, I was just like, but then I kept, no, this has happened before. But I just
You-
kept forgetting. I think because this movie was a slog for me.
It's bland.
It was so,
It's bland, it's generic, it's...
Beneath Hill bland.
Which sucks because I actually think the true story that it's based on, which I was reading up about it, is pretty fucking cool that we had to... It's like the real life version of Armageddon. Now hear me out. I had to jump in so quick there.
Yeah,
I had to
because-
jump in
Like,
super
wait, before you yell at me.
so quick. So Armageddon, right? We're sending miners to destroy an asteroid. It's ultimately what we're doing. We're hiring miners from Queensland to go to the war and dig mines so we can destroy Germans, which arguably are worse than an asteroid at this point in time.
I'm
Cancel.
really
Yeah.
glad you clarified that.
Quick, getting quick again. But that's, like, I think that for a premise is super cool. It's a war story we actually haven't really heard before. Is that it's always fun to see the ragtag group of people who necessarily aren't soldiers come in and do something cool. This movie fucked that story hard because it is so boring.
Fucks it hard.
It fucks it, and it does. It's not the mining we like, sort of thing. And I'm doing this all over my hands. I'm being very. I'm telling this movie off. I'm very disappointed. And that's what I mean. And you could have got rid of every flashback in this film because, until the final scene, there is no real reason there has to be a romantic payoff with this film. I was more intrigued as to what was happening as slowly as it was happening in the mines. I think the opening scene's great. Like, they're walking around and whispering, and you get this sort of sense of tension. And then the movie just loses all of it really quick.
I was actually interested when the flashbacks weren't happening because when the flashbacks were happening, I was busy throwing up over the romance that they wanted to put into this movie and how awkward, like, the parents and it's just bad. Like, none of them have talked to a human being ever in their lives when they're trying to talk to each other.
The father's mustache. Jesus.
So, like, that aside, I did actually enjoy the other elements of the movie. I was interested in the story and seeing where it was going. And I did... Like, I liked this movie a lot more than you three. I can tell just based on how you're talking about it, which is fine. Like, it's not a great movie. But there were things about the war elements that I did really enjoy. And I thought were interesting. And the story they were trying to tell was interesting. But after some of the movies we've watched this year, I'm finding beauty more in movies that I may not have previously.
No, that's fair.
And I did actually like what they tried to do with telling this war story that is very unique, like you were saying, that not a lot of people have probably even heard of. No. And also how they really drove home, without pulling any punches, the fact that there are literal children in this war. And one of them literally gets blown up.
I know.
Like,
some heavy shit.
Like, and one of them gets shot right in front of you as he's almost getting back to the other. Like, there are moments where it's really, to me, it hits really hard, and I feel like they achieved what they wanted to in telling how important the story is in those moments.
It's just sad that those moments were just so sporadic and broken apart by
I think if they would have taken out the flashbacks and really been able to focus fully on those moments and made them consistent, I think it would have been a great movie.
Because you look at something like this and like something like Danger Close.
Yes.
And you sort of like the money and the faith that was obviously behind Danger Close wasn't in this. Yeah. But this is probably telling a story that's more interesting.
Yes.
And you sort of just thought, we don't need, like, I think they sort of think, if we give a romance element, it's giving some sort of like human touch to it. And you're just like, no, there's plenty of humanity in these men barracking together, fighting for their lives.
Especially in a story where it wasn't sold to them as they were going to have to fight for their lives.
No.
And then they find themselves in this situation where all of a sudden it's like, I'm probably going to die.
Yeah.
And that's an element that I also do find fascinating. So when it focused on the pure horror of war, like the absolute excruciating horror of war, I really thought this was engaging. I thought it worked really well, and I thought, okay, that's the stuff that works. But the muddled narrative, the flashbacks, the way it's telling, I also think it's an hour before they get to Hill 60. Like there's that whole hour beforehand that just should have been gone. And they should have made my best example is you make it a heist film here in Hill 60 only, and that's the film. It's a 90-minute heist film about trying to get these to go off at the right time. I think that's the film they should have made. Instead, they tried to do an epic war film, which it just isn't.
It needed to be a smaller scale story, and they just didn't have the right set of hands editing the script and really refining the story they wanted to tell, unfortunately. I do also think it's interesting that between the flashbacks and the present, for somehow the acting in the present is good.
Right.
And the scenes with the dialogue and the acting in the past is horrific. I don't like, it's just such a disconnect where it feels so real and it feels so engaging when you're in the trenches with them and when they're having these conversations and you feel the tension in the relationships, and then you go to the flashbacks where you're supposed to get that human emotion and none of them can talk to each other. Like, it's
because they obviously filmed, all of the.
They would have filmed them separately,
and it's like it has this like it just breaks momentum. So like you're getting like super invested and then it goes to the
very frustrating
romance stuff. And because the romance stuff is just so excruciating, it makes you just go,
and
It's like taints the whole film.
Yeah.
And as much crap as, like I said, I'm as much as I'm trying to reconcile the age difference, because age differences generally don't bother me.
No.
But 16 is a little hard for me to reconcile with just watching it from a modern perspective.
Yeah.
But I do think if they had a 16-year-old that had better chemistry with him, it would have done a lot.
And also, like, he does look much older than 26.
Right,
So I think
right.
that also makes you go,
I
I can buy a 10-year age difference if there's believable chemistry and he looked younger.
Yeah. Or like 26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I looked,
because
yeah.
Brendan Cowell, like, even though he was 30 when he made it, he looks older.
So I looked it up. He was 34. She was 23.
Yeah.
But it still looks
Yeah,
like a
it
still
mountain
looks,
of...
it still looks like a 20-year age
But there's a
difference.
reason they cast a 20-year-old as a 16-year-old,
Yeah.
because she can pull off that look.
Yeah, like
He
she
can't
does
pull
look
off...
very super youthful.
He can't pull off the 26 look, which
No.
is where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
and I think I messaged you guys this, where I went, they just really, when it came to like those scenes, did not put a lot of work into casting,
No.
clearly,
No.
because it just doesn't work.
It
And
almost
it's-
feels like an afterthought for the
Right.
movie. It's almost like,
Where they-
we maybe they're like, we do have this like 90-minute like with the script. No, let's just add the romance. Or like, we need to know more about Oliver Woodward, which, yes, fair enough, but also
Which
just
could have
don't
also
make-
been the family. Like, that's
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
thing. It
Could be,
could have
yeah,
been
like
the family.
later on.
Which is
Yeah.
fair, but then again, you need to really refine it. If that's
Yes.
the story you're going to
Yeah.
tell, you got to make some cuts. You got to like really...
This movie is 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
cut a little bit out.
Yeah.
The other thing, I could be in a minority here. I did not like the ending. Like, I don't think the ending, the payoff of the ending of I've got to kill this kid, like where you can't delay it. We can't delay it. They didn't build that up enough for me. Like,
It happened very quick.
It
yeah.
was he made a decision without really going into the reason behind it. I don't know, it just felt out of character through where he had been through the entire film.
Well, and I think that's the problem with, like we said, not just focusing on the war. Because if you just focus on the war, you have between the point where we see him clearly willing to do anything for the men that are with him, to getting to this point where he just wants to end it, just wants to go home, doesn't want to do this anymore. We don't really get to see that leap because there are flashbacks where we're seeing other things instead of taking the time to watch him go to this really resigned point of just, I don't know if there's even anything I can do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so like run down by everything that's going on. And it is just kind of a leap a little bit to get to that point
to
by
it,
the end
yeah.
of it. But I mean, I actually did enjoy this movie. I would rather honestly watch this than the freaking Death at a Funeral. Like, I'd rather
definitely.
sit down and
Like
watch this movie and just
Yeah.
like,
Look,
I don't think it's a bad movie.
I think it's a flawed film that's got some positives that I wouldn't necessarily recommend running out and spending money on it, but
No, but
if
I
it's on
think
TV,
I think
like-
if you have an interest in war films and history, it might be worth
I think,
checking out.
I think this has been made for a specific audience, and I think they will definitely get a lot out of it. A casual moviegoer will probably, it might not
Well,
invest them as much.
and it's very Australian as
It
well.
is.
So you
It
have
is.
to be
It's-
mindful of
It's very Australian.
it's you can but you can tell like they're not acting like they're English, or like it's
No.
clearly
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they have their accent
Like,
and they're
it's
using
almost-
this slang.
It's
and
almost like off-putting how Australian it is.
I also do, and I think should get some credit, is that they decided we're not going to tell a story about Gallipoli. Like, we're going to actually tell
Yeah,
a World War
yeah.
One story. Other events happened in
Yeah.
World War One to Australia,
Yeah.
and they decided we're going to tell those stories. But anyway, that's the 3 films this week, guys. We've
we
got
go.
we've got some interesting stuff there. Let's move on to the weekend box office.
Here we go.
Number 1 was Kick-Ass with 19.8 million. Number 2, How to Train Your Dragon with 19.6 million.
Ooh.
Number 3, Date Night with 16.7 million.
Wow.
Number 4, Death at a Funeral with 16.2 million. Number 5, Clash of the Titans with 15.3
Wow.
million.
Damn.
Very close
That's
top
a
5.
drop.
Damn.
That is
That's a big drop.
Number 6, Last Song with 5.9 million. Number 7, Why Did I Get Married 2 with 4.9 million.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
4.09 million. Alice in Wonderland with 3.6 million. Hot Tub Time Machine with 3.4 million. And The Bounty Hunter with, it's not 3.8, I think it's 3.08 million. So that was the top 10 from this week. Dropped off from last week. Diary of a Wimpy Kid dropped from 9th, and Letters to God dropped from 10th.
Eat Jeez, diary of a wimpy kid.
It still managed to make enough money that we
got
more of
yeah.
them. Actually, three.
Three more
of them. All right, let's move on to the major movie news stories. Hayley Atwell signs on to play Peggy Carter in
cool.
Captain America: The First Avenger.
Nice.
Oh,
Hell
then
yeah.
They just
Who would have thought? Hayley Atwell, you get cast as Peggy Carter, and you're the closing moment of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, like,
How
well, I
sweet.
mean,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
hey, you know, it's funny. I would love to have been in the fly on the wall in that conversation of, oh, she's only in this film. Like, that relationship was going to be a one film deal, and then the niece was going to come in because they cast her as the niece as a love interest, and they thought that was going to be the going forward.
And everyone was like, "What the fuck?"
like
Yeah.
Peggy
That's
Carter's
fucking
she's-
weird.
Yeah.
she's the bomb, you guys.
Yeah, like, because that's in the comics, but Peggy, like, the relationship between her and Steve in First Avenger is so good that, of course, that's
And
where
then she's so good, and she gets 2 seasons of a TV show.
Yep.
Dude,
And-
I'm still so fucking mad that got canceled. That
And
was such
she
a good
did what?
show.
I never saw it. I do want to watch it.
Ugh.
though.
And she did what every cold-blooded woman and gay man would do, and she touched Chris Evans' chest, which wasn't
In the script, she did that of her own
Yeah.
When he
volition.
stood there,
Hey,
billowing
See an
chest, you'd be like,
see an
yes, and she
opportunity.
just had to do it. I'd be like, everyone would fucking do that.
You gotta
shit.
do it.
And
Maybe
it's
you
one of
do
the
that.
best. It was one of the best scenes in the movie
is.
where she's
It's
just
It's
like,
like she's just like, can I?
No, yeah, it's that moment of, holy shit, it's
Like,
real.
you actually look like that.
like this is not CG. What the fuck?
Yeah. Oof.
Next big news. Rachel Weisz signs on to star in Jackie, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Ultimately,
Wow.
both would leave the project.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Aronofsky's Jackie. Holy
That would have
shit.
been
that would have been
very different
I would have been
film.
like the assassination scene could have been
Very different.
much different.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, so he would have done that instead of one. He would have done that instead of Noah, and he would have done that instead of So
Like, oh.
actually, he signs on eventually to do Wolverine. That's his.
right.
That he signs on to do Wolverine, and then
Wow.
which was one of those ones. As soon as he signed on, that was I'll believe it when I've got my ticket in my hand.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, he left.
doesn't do
He
it.
left because he didn't want to go to Japan for several months to film it, and he didn't want to then come here to film it. Which, okay,
Oh, wow. Thanks, Aronofsky.
yeah. So
I don't care. You gave us Mother. I'm happy. It's fine.
fair enough. Well, it's the same. Mother was the same year as Jackie.
that's
Yeah. Okay. Next, Martin Scorsese signs up for The Invention of Hugo Cabaret. It will be his first film shot in 3D and and digitally. Which was the big thing. Martin Scorsese
is filming digital.
is now filming digital, and that was I remember when that came out. It was this is the death of film. Film's dead.
Yeah,
like
right.
we've got one of the masters no longer shooting on film, and he hasn't. I think because he shot Wolf on digitally.
Wolf was digital. And
Think Irishman
was digital.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then Silence might not have been.
No, I don't know if he's done film since.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
But
I could be wrong, but
I just remember that
I
was
feel like Silence would have had to be digital, considering how
maybe.
little he had to make that.
true.
for, yeah.
Yeah. And lastly, Josh Hutcherson is in talks to play Spider-Man.
Who ended up becoming
Shit.
Andrew Garfield,
Yes.
obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
But
think Hutchison would have worked in a
I think
Like-
aesthetically that would have been better in terms of age.
yeah.
Yeah.
For
Like he's
Andrew
got he's got
Garfield?
the Holland-esque
But you'd
look,
know,
but-
you'd know it was Spider-Man straight away because he's got such a thick
I know,
jawline.
his
It'd
face
just be
is
just
like-
such
he has
you
a
can't
Batman
hide-
jaw.
He has a Batman jaw, and
Yeah.
you can't hide that in a Spider-Man mask.
Yeah,
So
no,
But
that's-
it is interesting though, because you are right. Like he would the direction that the Amazing Spider-Man series was going was where ultimately the Homecoming series goes. He's staying in high school. Like
Yeah.
he is going to stay in high
Which
school.
Andrew Garfield does not.
But that
Pull off.
was the thing.
Absolutely.
Suddenly, yeah,
Just about
he-
as good as Tobey Maguire.
Yeah,
does.
they did. Well, that's why in the first one he graduates, and then
Yeah.
and then in this one they had to graduate him in Amazing Spider-Man 2 because he just looked too old.
Because we
Cool.
spoke about this a
Couple-
few
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like how we were saying, like when we first saw it, I was like, Emma Stone, you're like a laboratory assistant. Oh, you're in high school too.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I wish I looked like that in high school. What the fuck?
But hey, Josh Hutcherson, I think would have aesthetically it would have worked.
But he got Hunger Games instead, so that's okay.
Which
Poor guy.
I love those movies, and I think he's great.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think he fared better personally than he would have in Spider-Man
I think
because
so
that
too.
series ended up not
Yeah,
doing well
he
for
got,
anybody.
Like he got four movies and like yeah.
He got
Yeah.
4 movies, but also Andrew Garfield hasn't really recovered. Like
No.
he
But
that's
has
what I'm
a
saying.
little
He
bit,
got out
but
of-
like
yeah,
he-
Josh Hutcherson would have been like, you're the Spider-Man guy.
Yeah, like he.
Which, and the thing with Hutchison is all he really has is Hunger. Like, what else has he done other than Hunger
Yeah.
Games?
Yeah, that you can
really?
really. Yeah.
So at least-
Journey to
Journey
the
to
Center of the Earth.
too.
But at least he has the series
Zoo.
of the Hunger Games
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, at least you had
Yeah.
that. It's like kind of a universally beloved
Yeah.
thing
Whereas
rather
the
than
Spider-Man
being.
ones, like we think of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies and be like, Tom Holland is so
Yeah.
good. You kind of forget that there was 2
I
movies.
mean,
Yeah.
I try to forget. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as I love Andrew Garfield and as much as it breaks my heart because that was his dream role to do
Yeah.
and how fucking screwed over he got by that whole deal, I just prefer not to think about those movies. I know
don't-
there are people who like
I
them,
like
but-
the first one.
I like the first one. I can't stand the second one. The
Yeah.
second one is god awful.
And again, I was like, I think Emma Stone to me can elevate.
yeah,
lot.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
lastly, in Australian release dates, we had Beneath Hill 60, The Book of Eli finally opened.
Wasn't that our second week?
That was in
Eli
January.
Wasn't that like
17,000 years
wasn't that
ago?
like week 2 or 3?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And Coco Chanel and Igor Stravinsky.
Oh,
Ah, yes.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
it's definitely in the fashion world.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like a really bad gay right now. I should be like, you guys haven't seen Coco Chanel? Like, oh my God. But I haven't.
I actually have a funny story about what Book of Eli opened because we went to the theater and saw and me and my mates went to go see Book of Eli.
Because
and,
Coco Chanel was sold out.
Oh yeah, definitely. And but we saw it a week later. We saw it.
Oh, got me. That was good.
Sorry. Hey, I'm still here. Yay.
But a week later, like a week ago, Kick-Ass opened in Australia.
Right, yeah.
So we were in the theater, and the guy was like, "Oh, 350." We were about 17-year-old. We were 17 at the time. He's like, "Oh, 3 guys going to see Kick-Ass," and we're like, "No, Book of Eli." It was just like, "Oh,
Wait,
okay."
But you could be like, because we saw Kick-Ass on opening weekend. Duh.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're like.
Yeah.
We'd already seen it, so it was just funny for me, guys. That is this week's
Whew.
episode.
Wow.
We got through it. Yeah,
We did.
We got through that one.
We did.
3 interesting movies. Some interesting news stories.
Yes.
Guys.
What did you think of the movies this week?
Make sure you check out all of our links below. If you are following along at home, we've got a really good, nice, easy week for us all next week with the backup plan and the losers. So it's an easier week. Shorter movies.
In terms of number of movies.
Number
yes.
of movies. Good luck getting through them. But next week, guys.
Don't.
Guys, we will see you next week. Until then, my name is Jacob London. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for this past hour, and we will see you then.